I read from the rafters. This is another IG live that I'm doing with Ashley that you are not here to see, so like whatever. But like we're being nice and posting it later for you. But like last week was our first one, and we just kind of like rambled about Howard Ashman and like his career and Disney and like talking plants that eat people, and that kind of stuff. So like it was fun. And for the next one, it was kind of like, what are we going to do? And I was like, oh, Ashley's Star Wars trash, right? And so that this one is going to be kind of a lot similar to what we did last time, where it's like a topic that Ashley knows more than me about. And so this one is going to be a little bit more like interview type, where I'm kind of like asking her leading questions, and then she's going to answer them and take them places,
Right.
rather than Ashley telling a story and me constantly interrupting her with like random bizarre shit. So slightly different execution of a very similar kind of like thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this in two major parts. So we're going to talk about Star Wars, like I said, because like, and this is so weird. This is like the first time in my life for this, but like in a friendship, in a relationship, someone else is the Star Wars and I'm the Star Trek, right? And like, the thing is, I'm just very switchy in life in a lot of ways because like I know more about Star Wars than I do Star Trek, right?
Right.
And like, that's probably true for like a lot of people because like when I say I know a lot about Star Wars, I read a lot of like the extended universe and like played the video games and shit like that. So it's things that like have kind of limited applicability sometimes. But if I see like a ship model or like an alien species and stuff, like anything that was introduced before like before 2003, I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what that is. Anything a little bit later, maybe not. And so I know a ton of that shit, but like with Star Trek, there's so much fucking more to know without getting into like novels and video games and side shit. Because like Star Trek has a longer history as a TV show, and he can do more on TV shows than movies, right? But there's also like, I think there's still more Star Trek movies than Star Wars.
There are,
It's pretty close, actually.
Yeah,
that
there's
maybe a lie now.
Yeah,
Because
there's okay, so there's 9 main Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And then you have the two. So you have the two anthology movies, Rogue One and Solo, and I guess you can count in the Clone Wars pilot movie in there because they did release that in theaters. Yeah, and then the last Trek movie was Beyond, and that was like third.
Yeah, because there's 6. Okay, well, let's break it down this way. There's like 6 movies that came out using like Kirk and Spock, like the TOS, right? There's like 6 or 7 of those.
I believe so. I'm just gonna look that up real quick because I know the long running joke for a while was any of the odd number movies were terrible,
right?
While the even number ones were great. The only
J.J. Abrams fucked that up.
Yeah.
See, because this is the thing now, right? And like, if you in like 2001, if you had told us that like in the future J.J. Abrams would like hating J.J. Abrams would be like the thing that would bring Trekkies and Star Wars fans together, you'd be like, what the fuck? The guy who does Alias? How the hell is that gonna happen, right? Like this is before, like I'm saying, like 2001 before Lost, right? But if you said that again when Lost was on, people would be like, you're an asshole. Like that's not gonna happen. Wow, like there's like, could you imagine if J.J. Abrams got to do Star Wars and Star Trek? That would be so cool. And then you get to like 2019, and it's like, fucking hate this guy.
Yeah, because it's like I just recently watched.
Did he do TFA?
He did Force Awakens, yes, and then skipped The Last Jedi, and then came back after Colin Trevorrow got fired from Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, so nobody but like the Nazis hated Abrams on Star Wars until 2019.
I see.
Right? Yeah, I just want to make sure the timeline there because, like, I mean, technically there were a lot of Trekkies that hated J.J. Abrams in like 2008, but it's like, but like those are the people. Those are the people. Like when I was working at the video store, And I'd be like, hey, have you seen this new Star Trek? He's like, no, I didn't like it. I was like, why not? He's like, because you can't see Vulcan from the surface of Delta Vega.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. Have a great night. Which is like the planet that like it's the ice planet that Kirk watches Vulcan get fucked up from
right.
when he's stranded there. And I was like, oh, right. But then Into Darkness. So like that's the thing. You can only give J.J. Abrams like one movie on a franchise. This is
Right.
what we've now learned, right? Because
Yeah.
Into Darkness, because he did the second one, and like, oh, buddy, it was bad enough that they cast like, I mean, God bless Ricardo Montalban,
Uh-huh.
but like it was bad enough that they cast a Mexican actor as Khan the first time.
Right.
Like, don't make it worse by like casting him white. And like, there's a Star Trek comic, Ashley. They did like a movie tie-in comic where they like put Khan into a machine and they fucking drew Ricardo Montalban on the one end and he fucking came out Benedict Cumberbatch on the other. That is like the worst plastic surgery in history. Could you imagine? Like, and I know there's like a bunch of Sherlock fans or whatever out there who would be like, I mean, I don't want to call them white supremacists, but like, I mean, I'm sure there's like white supremacist Sherlock fans, but like, I don't want to clown on people too hard, but I know there's like people who find Benedict Cumberbatch like physically attractive, and like it's fine, it's totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
But like from my perspective, like even if you just I don't know like discount the racial aspect, like what a glow down, honey.
Yeah. Right.
Like, is that a dim down? Like the dimmer switch is like wow, you were that, and now you're that, right?
Yeah.
But like the physical size change is like me in the 4th month of like HRT though, right? So, thank God I didn't undergo like a problematic like white supremacist like race change as part of my HRT. I'm super excited about that part. But yeah, there's like let's just call it at like 6 or something movies with like the Kirk cast.
Yeah. There's
6, yeah.
Yeah, you got it right.
And then like I haven't seen all the TNG movies. I haven't seen all of the TOS movies. I've seen like Wrath of Khan and like part of like the next one after that, and like the funny parts of the one about the whales.
I watched the one about the whales. That's actually a really good one.
I'm sure it is, like especially now that we can appreciate the camp of it.
Right.
But then there's like First Contact and Generations and like Insurrection and Nemesis, which is like Twink era Tom Hardy playing a fucking clone of Patrick Stewart, and fucking Ron Perlman is in that movie too. It is like Insurrection is Nemesis is extremely bad and extremely awesome at the same time. Because like the thing is, and like this is like, I mean it's not problematic, but you're gonna be like, oh, that's unfortunate. The thing is, like I've always known, I've known as long as I've known who Tom Hardy is, that he was in Nemesis, even though I didn't see Nemesis until like 2016. Mm-hmm. But like when Bronson was announced and the trailer came out, Warren Ellis on his blog was like, how is the Picard clone from Nemesis going to play Bronson? Because of course Ellis knew who like the Bronson that movie is based on was. And I was like, what the fuck? Because I had seen Tom Hardy in Rock and Rolla. Like, that's what I knew him from. So I knew he was going to have to bulk up because he played the awesome gay character. But yeah, so you've got those. So there's got to be like 4 TNG movies, I think. Like, yeah, 4. Okay, so I actually named them all. I'm so much better at Star Trek than I actually think. So that's 10.
Yeah.
That's 10. And then there's the Chris Pine trilogy.
Yeah.
So that's 13. So there are still more Star Trek movies, even just movies. There's more Star Trek movies than there are Star Wars movies, which kind of feels weird to say, but like there's more Marvel movies in like a quarter of the fucking time. Right. There is either one. And it's like, what the fuck, honey? What the fuck? But like the thing for me though, and the reason why I'm more like Star Trek than Star Wars now, I mean, it kind of has to go with like where the franchise was at what points in my life, right?
Right.
And kind of what things I liked.
Mm-hmm.
But like the thing that we have to say, and there's just no room for argument about this, is that Star Trek is way gayer than Star Wars. Right? Like you can be gay and into Star Wars and you can find shit to queer, but Star Trek is way gayer. And the thing is that like it has been since day one, but in a weird way,
Right.
right? Because George Takei, right? And like he brought that energy. Like he brought that energy when he had like the when he's like cleansing and he's got the fucking saber. Like there's
Right.
stuff there. But the thing is that George Takei is a fucking icon
Right.
of gay activism. And like his identity as a Japanese American intersecting with his gayness is such an incredible and powerful and super important thing. Because I've been to see him talk and
Mm-hmm.
talk about like the experience of Japanese internment, the experience of playing like Vietnamese in Vietnam War movies in
Right.
British Columbia, Canada. Um, you know, and like all this kind of shit. And also like he was one of like the LBGT activists, one of like the Asian activists who was like yellow peril for Black Power. Like
Right.
he was one of those people. Cause like I had to act, cause like I knew, like I can't remember what her name is, but there was a famous um, woman who was involved in that, who knew Malcolm X and all these people. And so he was talking about coming from LA and like meeting New York activists and stuff. So when it was question period time, I was like, did you meet her? Because she was one of those people that was blowing up on Tumblr for like no reason. I mean, it's
Yeah.
amazing, right? But there's always these random historical figures. And he just kind of like looked at me for a second. He's like, what is this little white girl asking? He's like, and he was like, yeah, I did. And he was talking about the way that the day that like the way that he met her and her relationship with Malcolm X and how like she was there when he died and stuff. And I was just like you just get connected to queer history, right? And like
Yeah.
everybody except for William Shatner. Actually, that's not true. Sort of, sort of. Pretty much everybody except for William Shatner are like icons in some kind of struggle, right?
Right.
Because like him and Takei do not get along. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like fine. And the funniest thing is like Takei talking about how like everybody figured out that Takei was gay except for fucking Shatner. And he won't tell you it was Shatner. He's like, they're like, you know, like, were you out to like the cast? He's like, well, I can't do it Takei voice, but he was kind of like, well, most people figured it out because I kept bringing my friend Brad with me everywhere. My friend Brad,
Right.
right? But there was one cast member who couldn't figure it out. Okay, I can kind of do it. It's a K voice, and everybody fucking knows because like most of the people there were like hardcore Trekkies, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, I've seen the new movies and bits and pieces growing up.
Right.
Right, I was here to see a gay icon. I wasn't
Right.
here for Star Trek. And like most of the people were both, I think, really.
Right.
Like most people were accommodating and like kept the questions off like dumb Trekkie shit and being like, this man's an icon. There was a lot of reference for him there.
Right.
But yeah, but the thing is like Nichelle Nichols, all this shit and like and like the astronauts, like the actual real astronauts that she inspired just by
Right.
and like when Dr. fucking King says to her like, do not leave the show to be an activist, we need you on TV. Like fucking hell. Imagine that. Like someone like Dr. King, like a leader in your movement being like, we need you there for the visibility that you're doing. What you're doing right now is the work. Like, damn. But I mean the thing with like William Shatner is that he is the reason that that kiss made it onto air. And Takei tells the story incredibly. He's such a brilliant storyteller. The man is an incredible storyteller. And a lot of actors aren't.
Right.
Because they're there to act.
Of course.
He's a great storyteller and a great orator and just a brilliant person. I'm sure there's some things that he does or says I don't agree with, but the man is fucking amazing.
Right.
And so like Shatner forced it by fucking up the takes until it was too expensive to keep going, and the only take that they could use was the one with the kiss because they wanted to cut right before he kissed, but he would like cross his eyes or drop her or like stick his tongue out because it had to be him. He
Right.
understood his positionality in the moment, and it sucks that he's like really anti-trans. So I fucking like I don't hate sticking up for him on this, but I feel conflicted because he deserves credit for doing this. But we
Right.
also need to like recognize the ways that he's fucked up, right?
Right.
So like he recognizes his positionality then and there. He can't do it now, and
Right.
that's unfortunate. But like whatever. But he knew that he was the one that could do it. That he could still go on to do a stupid cop show
Right.
later, right? Like if Nichelle Nichols did it, they would recast her tomorrow, right? There would be like two Uhura's, just like there were two on Viv's. Like that's just
right.
what would have happened. So that's like, so that was Star Trek to me. It was like more for the people and what they did
Right.
than like, and that's even true of like Chris Pine and Zach Quinto and some of the other people. I mean, Zoe Saldana's a little, I don't know, that's not my territory. But after that
Yeah.
one movie, the Nina Simone movie, I was like, okay. But you know, there's a lot of like incredibly important things that Star Trek cast members do. And then fucking Discovery happened. And we're like, we're gonna take two people who are in Rent and they're gonna be a gay couple on Star Trek. And like Anthony Rapp in the first couple during the first couple episodes of like Star Trek Discovery is gonna blow up Kevin Spacey's shit, right? And like he's suing him now. This shit's not over. He is like he's not living rent free in Kevin Spacey's head. He is charging Kevin Spacey to live
Yeah.
in Kevin Spacey's head. Like Anthony Rapp is a fucking icon. I hate the fact that like all the shit that happened to him did, and
Right.
he would still be an icon if none of that happened. For
Oh,
having
of
been in
course.
Rent, for having
Of
done that
course.
shit in Discovery, for being a great actor, right? And like so like and then Discovery, like Jesus Christ, like evil bisexual, like Michelle Yeoh, like come on, like this show, and it's so fucking good. And the thing is, like, you know who Jonathan Frakes is, right?
Of course.
Right. So
Yeah.
like he's the guy who directed the worst TNG movies, and they brought him on to just direct Discovery,
Uh-huh.
and he shot this zero G fight scene in an elevator in Star Trek that fucking owned and was almost the coolest thing in the show. Well, in season one, it was like the coolest action scenes. The season two finale,
Mm-hmm.
bitch, it blew Game of Thrones away. Nobody talks about it because nobody saw it. It
Right.
was like Christopher Nolan incredible.
Wow.
Like there is kind of an almost interstellar thing happening, but it's
Right.
way cooler. And it has like a 3-stage Return of the Jedi action sequence on it. And then remember, it's a black woman who stars on this show.
Right.
And like Spock is dyslexic now.
Okay.
This show is like it feels like like if you describe it, it kind of feels like a dumb SJW meme, especially with the new news of like the trans and non-binary cast members.
Right.
But it is an expensive, high-flying, brilliantly constructed, amazing thing. Like it makes the Mandalorian look minimalist.
That's
Because it kind of is,
impressive.
because the Mandalorian is kind of small
Right.
and kind of lower in shape, but like Star Trek, like Discovery blows it in terms of scope and scale and action. It's way bigger, way louder, way more everything. And I mean, I love the Mandalorian. You know this, and we'll get into
Right.
that in a second. But it's just like that's Star Trek to me now. So I still don't know. Like I don't know what the Cardassians are. I know like jack shit about like I know memes about like DS9 and
Right.
Voyager because like and I had seen like 3 episodes of like Voyager with like 7 of 9,
Mm-hmm.
and I've just become increasingly like over that shitty costume and how you can see the boning in her corset right through it, and it's just like this blows.
You're
And then
right.
she just shows up looking like a fucking Mass Effect character in Picard and has this incredible anti-Daenerys Targaryen moment with the Borg cube
Uh-huh.
and this like fucking Emma Frost at the beginning of Grant Morrison's like X-Men run moment where like her children are dying and she's trying to save them and she like rejects ultimate power, and I'm like, bitch, where the fuck was this 7 of 9 for like 20 fucking years? Like this is the Star Trek character. Like, God, if you ever get a chance to watch Picard, like you will feel so much of the same way
Mm-hmm.
about her that you do like someone like Cara Dune. Maybe not like the exact same like psychosexual hold, you know,
Right.
where you just like light up like a bisexual Christmas tree waiting to get stepped on. But I had to take that out of the chat and put it right here.
Yeah, I was like, you had to say that out loud.
I did. But you know, but just the like yes of it all and like the gravity of her situation. So that's kind of like why I am where I am in Star Trek, despite like really liking a lot of Star Wars right now. So it's like the way that Star Wars is like blowing up with like all of these movies. Star Trek actually is like blowing up with all these TV shows, and it's like like I get Lower Decks with like my streaming service, so
Right.
I don't really like it, but I'm just it's there, and I'm like, well, I'm still drawing, so I'm gonna watch Lower Decks. You would like Lower Decks
Uh-huh.
because like the animation quality is like literally Rick and Morty. It's garbage. It's the worst, and
Right.
it upsets me that nobody spends money on animation anymore. Like BoJack Horseman is still unwatchable to me because I'm just like, no, it's not aesthetically nice and it looks cheap. Like Bob's Burgers makes me want to die.
Right.
And like, no offense to you guys, I know you guys like that stuff. It's fine. That's your thing. It's just not mine. I want fancy, expensive animation, but like, there's a lot of like Futurama in
Mm,
Lower Decks. There really is, and like, no matter what they do with Lower Decks, you're like someone's gonna make that comparison.
oh, of course.
But like, it kind of is. But the weird thing is that like they make Star Trek jokes in Lower Decks.
Uh-huh.
It's just like they talk about Kirk and Picard and Q. Like they
Okay.
just know who these people are and what they've done. So
Right.
it's almost like people like watching the show talking about other shows and not like people in the world.
Right.
You know, it would be like if Tony Stark was his body and you're like, oh hey, did you know that guy banged Carol Danvers once? And like, okay, like Avengers comics do shit like that sometimes, and you're just like, okay. But sometimes that can be like a quarter of an episode of Lower Decks. And like I finally figured out why I don't like Lower Decks.
Mhm.
Because it's just too fucking strange. Because like Picard isn't all that gay, like he gets more gay later. But it's just
Right.
like Patrick Stewart's like proximity to gay is like enough. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
just is. Like it's fine. And but like Discovery is like extremely queer.
Uh-huh.
Not from like day one exactly, but pretty quick. Like
Yeah.
let's not forget that like the biggest disaster gay in Hollywood is the guy who created Star Trek Discovery. Like he's been gone like since before the first episode aired because that's what Brian Fuller fucking does.
Of course.
He just ghosts you. Brian Fuller, Brian Fuller's relationship to like making TV shows is like cis men's relationship to trans women on Grinder. Just ghost.
I
He
mean,
might get what he wants before he leaves. He might not. But he's gonna
yeah,
fucking ghost.
I very
And
much remember the process behind Dead Like Me, so I understand.
yeah, and it's gonna be the default icon with no face on it because I actually don't know what Brian Fuller looks like, so it's just perfect. Um, so we're gonna do this episode in two parts. So now I don't have to do a Star Trek episode because I was kind of like, I kind of want to do a Star Trek episode, but it's just like my knowledge is not enough to carry
Yeah.
it. We would need someone else to do it, right?
Yeah.
But now we've just done it. It's handled.
Yeah.
Um,